It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Annapolis Mayor Gavin Buckley. Mayor, thank you again for joining me.
Hi, Donna. Great to be here. Love being on your show. Thank you.
We have a lot of stuff going on in Annapolis, and you have just actually, before the interview started, you said you have a goal in your 2 terms. So that was one of the questions, your 2 terms.
I think there's a lot to do, and I don't think I can get it all done in 1 term. We laid a lot of groundwork in the first 2 years. You're going to see lots of things come out of the ground in 2020. But for the big picture stuff, I'm not making decisions based on 4 years. I'm making them based on 8 years or 10 years or 20 years. And these are things that have to be done by politicians now, because we can't be thinking in these silos, in these short cycles, because we've got big issues ahead of us.
So you are definitely running again.
Yes, I'm running unless my wife tells me not to.
Our public housing has been, as with many cities, the federal government's money in HUD is drying up. It's going away. And housing, people should not be living in the conditions they're living in, whether it's in Annapolis or in Baltimore or New York City, in many cases. In Annapolis, as we know, there's a lawsuit that was followed by getting the city to start doing inspections, yes?
Yes.
Where are you at with the inspections?
So we've inspected probably a third of the buildings already. We obviously, you can't let people live in anything dangerous conditions, so anything that have any of those kind of violations had to be corrected immediately. Mm-hmm. We're moving forward with the rest of it. I'd say we're on to Harbour House, Eastport Terrace is our next goal, to inspect those buildings. But I've said from the beginning, my goal in 2 terms is to get all of our public housing rebuilt. We know that public housing has been defunded federally, and the buildings have got older and the money has got less. It's obviously going to lead to problems. So I spend time going to other communities, seeing rebuilds, bringing councillors with me, bringing residents with me to see what the future could be like. You can't change situations that happen in some of these communities where people feel hopeless unless you change the environment. So you start with rebuilding it and reimagining it, and then you have to add other things. It has to be about education and jobs and transportation and all the things that you need to sort of uplift communities.
And the inspections, do you have enough personnel? Do you need more personnel? How's that?
So we brought in an extra inspector to speed up the inspections. Hacker only have the resources to correct at a certain rate, and so we're on track to get it done.
Get it done by?
I think by the middle of next year, 2020, should be all complete. Probably earlier than that, but I'd say on the outside, the middle of next year.
And reimagining and rebuilding. You have 2 that will be happening.
So Newtown, when I came into office, Newtown, they'd applied for funding 6 or 7 years ago. It had been, they didn't get their funding, and then they just forgot about it. I made sure that when they applied this time, public housing is a private property, but I'm involved in trying to move it forward. We made sure that there was a backup plan, and that backup plan came through. So now Newtown will be starting demolition early next year, and then rebuilt in a year or so. And Morris Blum is very close to getting financing for rehab of our only senior housing, and that will be in motion. So that just leaves 3 properties for us to focus on. That's Robinwood, Harbour House, and Eastport Terrace. So we can't keep band-aiding these buildings. We have to have a big picture mentality when it comes to this.
For these, for the residents of these units that will be undergoing demolition and then reconstruction, are there enough units to put them for these?
Yeah. So all the people who have been
displaced or
have to find another location. There is availability in other public housing in the city, but there's also a voucher program that you're eligible for. So you have quite a lot of options in terms of where to go while we do the rebuild, and then you get to come back to a beautiful new set of buildings.
Super. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Mayor Gavin Buckley from the city of Annapolis. We're talking about public housing. We know federal money is going away from HUD. Have you met with private developers?
I mean, I go to different developments. So maybe I've met some, not specifically to any kind of project in the city. No.
Do you see that as the future?
Yeah. The RAD program is pretty much the future, and that's not through choice. It means that local municipalities have to come up with their own solutions. Right. So I'm of the mind that we need affordable housing in the city. We have to understand that for some people they haven't been as lucky as the rest of us, and so if you've missed the boat to buy a house in the city of Annapolis, I mean that boat has been selling for a long time. Right. It's so expensive in this city, and for some people, they're not going to get out of their wheelchair at 60 and reinvent their career, or we have to understand that there's a portion of the community that desperately need this, and we see it all over the world. You should take care of your
neighbors,
your seniors,
and Newtown 20 and the others down the road. Or is there a look at green or environmentally friendly? Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we're reimagining public housing, we are talking about how we can consider making them carbon neutral, how we can install solar panels or filtration systems, how we can put the properties on microgrids so that, if a disaster happened, the best place would be to go to, the safest place to be would be go to public housing. Wouldn't that be something different, And so we also talk about, the model, the failed model of putting all marginalised people in one area, people that are not as lucky as the rest of us, is not the model. You have to insert mixed income housing. You have to sort of not just put all warehouse people on the other side of the tracks, or all in one place, So.
All right, City Dock. Since I last saw you, there's been a lot of now new development with what the future of City Dock looks like. And we're looking at a $50 million project starting, it's 3 phases, right? Starts with Noah Hillman Garage.
Yeah, so the City Dock plan, there have been a number of plans for City Dock, so and they've happened, and then they've sat on a shelf, and they've been an idea and a piece of paper, but nothing more. We haven't put one blade of grass at City Dock. We haven't lifted one brick. The difference with this action committee and the ULI plan is that it's going to happen. And the exciting thing is that we have found a way to fund it that we won't have to go directly to the taxpayer. So there's 4 ways to fund it. So first of all, just if I can break it down, the reason it's going to happen this time is because we don't have a choice. The water is coming at us faster than it's ever come at us, right? And so if we don't do something to protect the Naval Academy or protect City Dock, we will lose it. So we have to. So we know the water's coming. That's the first thing.
Yeah, one of our biggest money makers, the boat show, actually had to close on one day, right?
Yep.
Early.
Exactly. That's a great case in point. We had done a short-term plan that had kept City Dock dry for 6 months, but when the tidal surge went to 4.1 feet, it overcame what we had put in place. But we do have a short-term plan to fix that if that ever happened again in the short term. But so the reason it's going to happen is, 1, the water is coming at us at a rapid rate. 2, we have an excellent partner in the Naval Academy. We know that the U.S. Naval Academy could not would be embarrassing if they went underwater. We know that they are moving full steam ahead with their plans to put a wall around the academy or a levee or whatever implementation, gates or whatever they do. But they can't just do that and let all the water push into the historic
downstream,
district.
Right.
Yeah. So we will partner with them. And the third thing is, compared to other times, is that we have a funding mechanism. And that funding mechanism consists of 4 things. The first thing is federal resiliency grants, money that's out there all over the country for all the cities that are dealing with sea level rise. The second funding mechanism would be in partnership with the Naval Academy. There will be certain amounts of money that will be available through the Naval Academy when they do their implementation. The third thing is a P3. It's we're going to attach a valuable asset that the city owns, which is the Hillman Garage, the garage behind City Dock. It's a 450-car garage. We've figured that we could take that footprint to about 700 cars. If we go down a couple of floors, and then build the top floors with flat floor plates. So in the future, when we're all driving less, we could convert the top floors possibly to apartments or to offices or something like that in 10 years or 20 years when there is a lot less automobiles on the road. And so that's a valuable asset. So we would ground lease that to a private developer. We would say build a garage, and then help us build part of City Dock, right? And then you can get the revenues from the garage.
Going in part to the developer?
To the developer. They would term out a deal over 20 years or 30 years or however long they needed to pay back their investment and their profit. And then at the end of that term, they would hand the asset back to the city. So that gives us a chunk of money to use at City Dock.
Right.
Possibly they'll use the revenue from the 50 spaces we leave on City Dock. There's 150 spaces at City Dock roughly. So if we take 100 of those and put them into our new 700-car garage and leave 50 at City Dock, we could competitively price the 50 spaces at City Dock. That's the third mechanism. The fourth mechanism is a financing authority that we're going to be going to the state for. And we're going to go to the state to ask for legislation, just general legislation, to create a financing authority. How it's funded would be up to the different municipalities. But we know it's not just the city of Annapolis. Other cities and counties, municipalities all over the state are going to be dealing with sea level rise.
So this is something similar to the Maryland Stadium Authority.
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take another short break. Okay. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Annapolis Mayor Gavin Buckley. We've been talking about the reimagining of City Dock, and it looks to be like this wasn't all you, right?
So it was a big grassroots effort, right? It was we brought a lot of stakeholders together on this. Historic Annapolis, the Naval Academy, the environmental community, the city, and nearly 100 volunteers worked tirelessly for a year to come up with a consensus plan. And this consensus plan has brought everyone's thoughts into the process, and we truly have come up with a great compromise for an amazing, beautiful space. City Dock is going to be raised 6 feet. There's going to be a great public park there for everyone to use. And not only will it be a great public park, but it will be a way to filter stormwater. Every bit of water that falls onto City Dock right now rolls untreated into Spa Creek. So we get three things. And then we get a wall or a barrier that will keep the water out up to 9-point-something feet. So
that cluster with all the crosswalks is being fixed too.
Yeah, so there'll be less cars turning there, so there'll be a higher, lesser need for that. So we were going to experiment with a traffic light there, which had a pilot idea ready to go. It got a lot of pushback, so we stepped away from it. And so all the controversial things have been taken out of this plan. That light was controversial. For some people, they didn't want the circle to be there anymore because it's a big space that no one goes to, and they wanted to create a T and a light.
But that's gone?
That would be controversial. So what we've done instead is we've thinned the circle, we've lowered the circle, and then we've created some connecting ways to get to the circle around it. Uh-huh. So you'll be able to step over the circle, sit in the circle if you want, and have a coffee or a sandwich, or we can go there. Yeah, it'll be like a little pocket park as well.
All right. The City of Annapolis opioid lawsuit. The city has filed a lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers seeking $400 million. And back in September, it was announced that the attorney representing the city told you in a closed session that the city was included in a settlement class, and being included in the settlement class was not a decision made by the city, but rather the court, as it groups plaintiffs together in one federal court for a proposed settlement arrangement. Inclusion in this was involuntary. And you had until November 22nd of this year to make a decision to remain in or opt out. Where are we at with that?
I don't have all the information in front of me, and it was a clever move on the part of the big pharmaceutical companies. So to pick a number and then throw it back at us, and then we're all you either accept it or don't accept it, and then risk then not being any money at the table. So I think it's still in a holding pattern. So we're waiting for that.
Resiliency, and obviously we've been talking about with the City Dock reimagining, but you also went up to Newport, Rhode Island, not too far back, and had discussions. What was learned from that, or what did you share with them? Yeah,
I think that Narragansett Bay is a mini version of the Chesapeake Bay, so all the towns that surround Narragansett Bay dealing with the same problems that we're dealing with. We got a lot of attention because we're further ahead than a lot of cities in the country in terms of preparing for resiliency, at least in the city centre. So it was a great trip. I got to experience some of the aquaculture that was happening in Narragansett Bay on top of the resiliency meetings that we had. We are going to have a delegation from Newport coming down to see what we've done. We think we're going to create a national model with this. If we find a way to pay for this without going to the taxpayer, if we're ahead of other cities in terms of resiliency, and we create a public space out of it, as well as a filtration system for stormwater, it's a really good model for other cities to use. So we're expecting to be the resiliency capital of the country. We have big ambitions for what we're doing, and I think Newport sort of got the ball rolling. We went up there to study the it's called the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, to see how that rolled out, because we're going to have financing authority that will kind of use some of those principles. So it was a great learning experience, and we're excited to start leading the way on this stuff. Yeah.
And was there any words mentioned about the Sailing Hall of Fame and the Capitol and who is the cat? Go ahead.
I went to the Tennis Hall of Fame, or I went by the Tennis Hall of Fame, and I went to the building, and I think that they made a bad decision. The city dockers are going to be amazing when we finish, and it would have been great to have a Sailing Hall of Fame as one of the anchors for this new reimagined city dock. So. And I looked at the building that they're going to go into, and they have to share it. It's not. I don't think it's going to be as dynamic as what they could have created at City Dock.
All right.
But good luck to them. Yeah.
Truxtun Pool. Tell me where we're at with that. Still opening on time, do you think?
Yes. So obviously we're at the mercy of a strong economy. And tariffs, right? Mm-hmm. So when there's a strong economy, you don't get to bid as many people against one another for a contract. Contractors can sort of write the terms of their contracts a lot stiffer than if they really needed the work.
So you're sort of alluding to that it's coming in over budget, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
How much over budget? Do we know yet?
I think $1 million something. Yeah.
So it was supposed to be $4 million. You're looking at 5+ now.
Around that. Yeah. It's going to be an amazing pool. We obviously, I think we had some surplus money that we could throw at it. So it's not. We've found a way to fill that gap. Mm-hmm. But what we need to focus on is what it's going to be like when it's finished. Mm-hmm. So as opposed to what it is now, this new pool is going to have slides and spray parks and kiddie pools. It's going to be a great space, and it hasn't been upgraded for a long time.
No, definitely it has not been.
And it's part of our overall, and just around the corner we're resurfacing the new tennis courts and pickleball courts, and then we're going to start working on fixing some of the trails there. I always recommend this to people.
Please, because I actually was injured. Yes, on the trails. The trails need it. So that's on the to-do list?
It's a lot of erosion there.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, and this isn't finalised, but the team that did Bacon Ridge trails, the team that did Waterworks Park trails, if anyone doesn't know, we've just cut in a whole bunch of hiker-biker trails in Waterworks Park, which is just off Defence Highway. It's 600 acres the city owns. You can go there and park on Housley Road, walk in this pristine park, and really enjoy the nature. Ultimately, that park will be connected all the way down to the historic district when we finish with the Poplar Trail extension, which we're going to call the West East Express. But what I'm talking about, Truxtun Park, is I wish people would go there, more people would go there, because it's such a beautiful place.
Gem.
And you can walk along a ridge there, and you can see Spar Creek and see the houses across Spar Creek. You can loop back around to the boat ramp. It's such a beautiful
fixing
spot.
The trails is on the to-do list.
The erosion there is really, they were not thought through well when they were installed 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time, and I thank you very much for joining me again today.
No worries. Thanks. Always great to be here. Thank you.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We'll see you next week.